Hey, I'm Carl Azus. This is CNN Student News. Hope you had a great weekend. We have a lot to cover as we kick off this last week of September, starting with the race for the White House. When voters head to the polls next year, President Obama will likely be the candidate for the Democratic Party. We don't know yet who will represent the Republican Party. A group of candidates have been facing off against each other, hoping to get the Republican nomination. Over the weekend, those candidates faced off in 2 straw polls. The results don't mean anything official. They just give us an idea of where voters might be leaning. In Florida, Herman Cain came out on top. The talk show host and former businessman got 37% of the votes in that straw poll. Texas Governor Rick Perry, the front runner in recent polls for the Republican nomination, came in second with just over 15%. Governor Perry also finished second in a Michigan straw poll. Those results came out yesterday. There, Perry lost out to former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney, who got 51% of the votes. Romney was expected to win. He's from Michigan, and he won that state's Republican primary when he ran for president in 2008. Following up on a story from last week when NASA wasn't sure where debris from a satellite might crash on Earth. Well, they're still not sure, even though this thing crashed sometime late on Friday night. The UARS, Upper Atmosphere Research Satellite, was huge. It was the size of a bus. It weighed several tons. NASA didn't expect the whole thing to make it back to Earth, but they did think a couple of dozen parts could survive re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere. John Zarrella and Reynolds Wolf are here to talk about where the UARS might have come down and how likely it is that someone actually saw it fall.
NASA says that the satellite did re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. They're saying that the Joint Space Center in Vandenberg Air Force Base out in California said that it actually re-entered over the Pacific Ocean between those times, but they don't know exactly when or where those parts that were expected to reach Earth actually landed. So that video over Texas, a long way from the Pacific Ocean, I mean, that may be a stretch.
We do have some interesting eye reports. You'll see these taken from Minnesota, where we definitely see something in the skies above. Could this be part of the satellite? It could be, but you have to remember that when it comes to things from out in space making contact with the planet Earth, actually making the way through the atmosphere, it happens about 20,000 times per year. So there's a variety of stuff it could possibly be. Is it possible? Certainly, by all means. But is there a way that NASA's going to be able to tell without any question that this thing specifically is connected with that satellite? It's impossible to say.
Today's shout out goes out to Mrs. Barron's class at the St. Jude School in Mountain Top, Pennsylvania. Which of these North African countries is Libya? If you think you know it, then shout it out. Is it A, B, C, or D? You've got 3 seconds. Go. On this map, the nation labeled C is Libya, which is more than 90% desert or semi-desert. That's your answer, and that's your shout out.
Libya's new leaders say they want to make sure that all regions in that country are represented in Libya's new government, but they have to figure out just what that government's going to look like. The National Transitional Council, the NTC, is holding 3 days of talks about the formation of Libya's new government. The group says putting the government together could take up to a week. Last week, one member of the NTC said the group won't announce its new government until the fighting is over in towns that are still loyal to former Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. Remember, Gaddafi's out of power, but the battles for control of the country are still going on. Fighters on both sides are still being killed or wounded. Hopping across the Mediterranean Sea to Spain, where the region of Catalonia is beginning a new era today. It's one where the centuries-old tradition of bullfighting is no longer allowed. The regional government voted last year to ban bullfights after an animal rights group got 180,000 signatures on a petition. The opinions on both sides of bullfighting are pretty strong. It has a long tradition in Spain. It has inspired artists and writers like American writer Ernest Hemingway, for instance. And it's something that many Spaniards consider an important part of their culture. But people on the other side of this debate argue that it's cruelty against the bulls. They're hoping this leads to similar bans in other parts of Spain. Right now, this only affects Catalonia. Bullfighting is still legal in most of the rest of the country. On Friday's show, we covered the issue of capital punishment. Now we're covering your opinions about it. Tara believes in a life sentence, but not a death sentence. Do we really want to destroy a person's life? Capital punishment makes us murderers, she writes. But Petra argues somebody who has murdered somebody deserves to be punished like that. We spend millions of dollars to give unrepentant criminals grace. Jose wrote, the only one who can end a life is God. We should only put criminals in jail, period. Selena thinks capital punishment can help with crime rates because some people who commit crimes expect to go to jail and hope to get out early for good behavior and keep living their lives like they did before. Johan asks, how can we make criminals see the wrong in their actions when it's the same thing we do to them in response? Murder to the murderer simply frees them from the lifelong jail sentence they deserve. Emily says capital punishment should only be used in situations where the jury is more than 100% sure the suspect committed the crime. There needs to be strong evidence to ensure the death penalty isn't used unnecessarily, she writes.
See if you can ID me. I first appeared in a parable from the Bible. I helped someone that other people had passed by. My name comes from a region called Samaria. I'm the Good Samaritan, a name that's used to describe someone who helps someone else.
Good Samaritan certainly applies to one Minnesota high school athlete. During a recent cross-country meet, Josh Ripley lived kind of a recreation of the Good Samaritan story. He ran an extra half mile. It's like running more than 8 football fields, carrying somebody else, someone he was competing against. Esme Murphy of affiliate WCCO has our story.
Josh Ripley was warming up with teammates at Andover High School. Clear across the metro at Lakeville South High, Mark Palauskas is walking with a limp and 21 stitches in his ankle. The boys are linked by Josh's selfless act.
One person wasn't slowing down and just got me in the ankle.
Another runner's spike pierced Mark's ankle. He began bleeding badly.
I could see my ankle bone and I just knew it was bad. A lot of runners passed me.
But then came Josh, who saw Mark on the ground clutching his ankle.
It was bleeding pretty profusely, yes. And I asked him if I could help him, and he said I could, so I picked him up and started running with him.
Just scooped me up and started running. I was like, whoa.
With Mark in his arms, Josh ran half a mile to the start of the race and brought him to his coaches. With Mark safe, Josh then turned around and ran the 3-mile race.
I had blood on my legs and arms after carrying him, and a lot of people thought I was hurt, but I had to inform them that it wasn't my blood and I was fine.
Josh is surprised he's getting attention for what he thinks is not that big a deal.
It's kind of crazy how you do something kind and you get recognized as much as I have been.
But for Mark, Josh's act of kindness is a very big deal.
I just want to say that I'm really thankful that for what he did. Stopping his race just to help me is really a truly wonderful thing that he did.
Really a truly wonderful story, and it led us to ask this question on our blog at cnnstudentnews.com. How have you or someone you know sacrificed something to help someone else? Doesn't have to be a big sacrifice, just given something up to lend a hand. We're looking forward to reading your stories and only your first names at cnnstudentnews.com. Before we go, Chicago's O'Hare Airport hosted a friendly competition recently. On one end of this tug-of-war, you have a team of 20 people. And on the other end of the rope, you got one of O'Hare's finest. It's not really a tug-of-war. The goal is for teams to see who can pull a 99-ton plane 20 feet in the fastest time. The event is raising money for the Special Olympics, so even if you lose, you're doing something good. Plus, testing your strength against a jet just sounds like fun, plain and simple. Although, if you think you can win that tug-of-war on your own, you better get a grip. We hope to rope you in with more headlines tomorrow. For CNN Student News, I'm Carla Zeus.